Commander Zarath had seen many species during her tenure aboard the galactic trade station Nexus Prime. The massive structure floated in neutral space, serving as a hub where dozens of civilizations conducted business. She prided herself on understanding the psychology of every race that docked at her station. The humans, however, remained an enigma. They were relatively new to galactic society, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 standard cycles ago. Most species required centuries to develop the emotional control necessary for interstellar diplomacy. Humans had done it in mere decades, yet something about them unsettled the other races. Perhaps it was their unpredictability. Where the logical Zerani would calculate every possible outcome before acting, humans seemed to operate on instinct. Where the peaceful Molari would seek harmony above all else, humans appeared ready for conflict at any moment. Yet they traded fairly, honored their contracts, and had never initiated hostilities. Today, a human freighter called the Wandering Star had docked at Bay 94. Its captain, a middle-aged human named Marcus Chen, was a regular visitor. He transported rare minerals from the Outer Rim colonies to the core worlds. What made him unusual, even among humans, was his companion. The creature followed Chen everywhere. It stood on 4 legs covered in brown and black fur, with pointed ears and a tail that moved constantly. Humans called it a dog, though the universal translator struggled with the concept. The nearest equivalent in galactic standard was domesticated, pack hunter, but that failed to capture the relationship between Chen and his companion. The dog, which Chen called Rusty, displayed an intelligence that bordered on sentience, yet it had never been officially classified as such. It obeyed Chen's commands instantly, yet Chen treated it more like family than property. The sight of a human sharing living quarters with what appeared to be a modified predator disturbed many species. Zarath watched through her office viewport as Chen emerged from his ship. Rusty trotted beside him, tail wagging in that peculiar human canine display of contentment. Other traders in the docking bay gave them a wide berth, not from fear of Chen, but from uncertainty about the creature beside him. "Station Commander," her aide, a nervous Polari named Kixtal, approached her desk. "The Hegemony delegation has arrived. They're requesting immediate clearance to Bay 95. Zarath's mandibles clicked in annoyance. The Hegemony rarely visited Nexus Prime, preferring to conduct their affairs from their heavily fortified homeworlds. When they did travel, it usually meant trouble. The Hegemony viewed most other species as inferior, particularly the newer spacefaring races. "Grant them clearance," she ordered, "but assign extra security to that section. Discreet surveillance only." 3 hours later, the first incident occurred. Chen was conducting routine business in the station's main marketplace when a group of Hegemony soldiers entered. Their leader, a massive creature with chitinous armor and multiple eyes, surveyed the area with obvious disdain. The marketplace fell silent as other traders recognized the uniforms. Rusty, who had been lying peacefully beside Chen's trading booth, suddenly stood. His ears pointed forward, and a low sound emerged from his throat that the translator rendered as warning vocalization. "Easy, boy," Chen said softly, his hand moving to rest on Rusty's head. The dog's tension eased slightly, but his eyes never left the Hegemony soldiers. The Hegemony leader, Sub-Commander Vextai, noticed the human and his companion. His multiple eyes focused on them with obvious interest. He approached the trading booth with heavy, deliberate steps. "Human," Vextai's voice was harsh through the translator. "You bring predators to a peaceful trading station?" Chen looked up from his manifest. His expression remained calm, but Zarath, monitoring through security feeds, noticed the slight tightening around his eyes. "This is Rusty. He's my companion, properly registered with station security. It shows aggression toward Hegemony personnel. He's protective. That's his nature." Vextai's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among his species. "Perhaps it requires discipline. The Hegemony has methods for training inferior creatures." The marketplace had gone completely silent. Even the mechanical sounds of the air recyclers seemed muted. Chen stood slowly, his hand still resting on Rusty's head. "I appreciate the offer, Chen said, his voice carrying a tone that made several nearby traders step back. But Rusty doesn't need training. Vextai studied the human for a long moment. All creatures require proper hierarchy, human. Even your kind. Maybe, Chen replied, but not today. The tension hung in the air like smoke. Finally, Vextai turned, away but not before his gaze lingered on Rusty with unmistakable malice. That evening, Zareth reviewed the security footage again. She had witnessed thousands of confrontations during her career, but something about this exchange troubled her. She had seen species facing extinction fight with less controlled intensity than Chen had displayed while simply standing beside his dog. Her aide entered the office with the day's reports. Commander, the hegemony delegation has extended their stay. They cite security concerns regarding the human vessel. Zareth's secondary arms tapped nervously against her desk. In all her years of service, she had learned to recognize the signs of impending conflict. The hegemony didn't extend stays without purpose, and humans didn't display that level of controlled aggression without cause. She made a note to increase security around Bay 94, though she couldn't explain why she felt it would be necessary. Something in Chen's eyes when Vextai had mentioned discipline had reminded her of old recordings from humanity's first contact with hostile forces. The galaxy had learned not to underestimate human military capability, but this felt different. This wasn't about ships or weapons or tactical superiority. This was about something far more primal, something that the other races didn't fully understand about human nature. As she prepared her evening reports, Zareth couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to witness something unprecedented. The galaxy had seen human warriors, human diplomats, human traders and explorers, but they had never seen a human whose family had been threatened. She hoped for everyone's sake that they never would. The next morning brought an uneasy calm to Nexus Prime. Commander Zareth had spent a restless sleep cycle reviewing security protocols and incident reports. The hegemony delegation remained aboard their vessel, but their soldiers had been seen patrolling the station's corridors under the pretense of familiarization tours. Chen went about his business as usual. He visited the parts dealers in Section C, negotiated fuel contracts in the administrative offices, and stopped by the station's small recreation area where Rusty could exercise. To any observer, he appeared relaxed, but Zareth's security training helped her notice the subtle changes. The human's movements were more economical now, wasting no motion. His eyes tracked every hegemony soldier they encountered, cataloging positions and equipment. Most telling of all, he never left Rusty alone, not even for the brief moments that had been his previous habit. Dr. Yila Nem, the station's chief xenobiologist, had requested a meeting with Zareth that afternoon. The elderly Corvani scholar had spent decades studying interspecies relationships and was considered the galaxy's foremost expert on human-animal bonding. Commander, Dr. Yilanem settled her crystalline form into the specialized chair designed for her species. I've been reviewing the security footage from yesterday's incident. I believe you should understand what we're witnessing. Zareth activated her desk's privacy screen. Please, Doctor. Your insights would be valuable. The relationship between humans and their dogs is unlike anything else we've encountered in the galaxy. It's not ownership, as the hegemony assumes, nor is it simple companionship. It's an evolutionary partnership that spans thousands of their years. The doctor's translation device hummed as she accessed her research files. Dogs were originally wild predators on the human homeworld, but humans didn't conquer them through force or genetic manipulation. They formed a mutual bond. Dogs gained protection, food, and care. Humans gained loyalty, protection, and emotional support. I'm familiar with basic human-canine relationships, Zareth replied. But why does this concern the current situation? Dr. Yilanem's crystalline features shifted in what her species considered grave seriousness. Because you're thinking of this in terms of property or pets. That dog isn't Chen's possession. It's his family. And humans have a saying about threatening their family. She activated a holographic display showing ancient human historical records. When humans perceive a threat to their family units, they undergo what their psychologists call protective aggression. It's a state where their normal social inhibitions are temporarily suspended in favor of ensuring family survival. The recordings showed human conflicts throughout their history. Zarath watched warriors fighting with desperate fury to protect their loved ones, parents sacrificing themselves for their children, and ordinary citizens becoming lethal threats when their families were endangered. The hegemony doesn't understand this, Dr. Yelenem continued. They see hierarchy and dominance. They assume the dog is property that can be taken or destroyed to assert control over the human. They have no concept of the bonds that drive human behavior. Are you suggesting Chen would become violent? I'm suggesting that if harm comes to that dog, you won't be dealing with a human traitor anymore. You'll be dealing with something much more dangerous. That afternoon, Bextai made his move. Chen was in the station's small park area, a section designed to provide psychological relief for species that required natural environments. Rusty was playing with a simple throwing toy, bounding across the artificial grass while Chen watched with obvious affection. Bextai approached with two subordinates, their heavy armor clanking against the deck plating. "Human Chen," he called out. "We need to discuss station regulations." Chen retrieved the toy and walked over, Rusty following closely. "What regulations?" "Dangerous animals require proper containment. Your creature moves freely without restraint. Rusty isn't dangerous and he's not required to be restrained according to station law." Bextai's mandibles clicked in amusement. Station law can be interpreted many ways. For instance, we observed your creature showing aggression yesterday. That could be classified as a threat to station security. Chen's voice remained level, but Zarath, monitoring through security cameras, noticed his posture shift almost imperceptibly. Rusty wasn't aggressive. He was alert. Alert to what? Hegemony personnel conducting lawful business. Alert to potential threats. And you consider hegemony forces threatening? The question hung in the recycled air like a trap. Any answer Chen gave could be twisted into an admission of hostility or an insult to hegemony honor. Chen looked down at Rusty, who sat patiently beside him, tail wagging slowly. "I consider anything that threatens my family to be a potential problem." "Family?" Vextai's multiple eyes focused on the dog. "This is property, human. Useful property, perhaps, but property nonetheless." "No," Chen said quietly. "He's family." Vextai stepped closer, his massive bulk casting a shadow over both human and dog.
"The hegemony has dealt with many species who fail to understand proper relationships."
Perhaps a demonstration of correct hierarchy would be educational. One of his subordinates moved to flank Chen while the other activated what appeared to be some sort of restraint device. The message was clear: submit to hegemony authority or face consequences. Chen's hand moved to rest on Rusty's head. The gesture appeared casual, but Zarath recognized it as both comfort and preparation. "I understand hierarchy just fine," Chen said, "but you seem to misunderstand something important about humans." "And what is that?" Chen looked up, and for the first time since the confrontation began, he smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. "We don't abandon family, ever." The temperature in the park seemed to drop several degrees. Other visitors began moving away without quite knowing why. Even Vextai's subordinates shifted uncomfortably. "You would risk yourself for a mere animal?" Vextai asked. "I would risk everything for family," Chen replied. The standoff continued for several more moments before Vextai stepped back. "We will continue this discussion later, human, when you have had time to consider the wisdom of cooperation." As the hegemony soldiers left, Chen knelt beside Rusty and scratched behind his ears. "It's okay, boy," he said softly. "It's okay." But Zarath, reviewing the recording later, noticed something that chilled her to her core. For just a moment, when Chen had smiled at Vextai, his eyes had held the same cold calculation she'd seen in recordings of human military commanders, planning the complete destruction of their enemies. She immediately sent a priority message to Galactic Security, requesting emergency mediation protocols. Something told her they were running out of time to prevent a catastrophe. The message from Galactic Security arrived 6 hours later. Mediation team delayed. Maintain status quo until arrival in 72 standard hours. 72 hours. Zarath stared at the communication with growing dread. In her experience, when tensions reached this level, 3 days might as well be 3 years. Chen had returned to his ship after the park incident, but not before stopping at the station's communication center. He'd sent several encrypted messages to unknown recipients using human diplomatic channels. The encryption was beyond the station's ability to break, but the fact that he was calling for backup spoke volumes. Meanwhile, the hegemony delegation had called in reinforcements of their own. 2 additional ships had arrived during the night cycle, bringing Vexti's available forces to nearly 60 soldiers. They claimed to be conducting security exercises, but their patrol patterns clearly focused on the section containing Chen's ship. Dr. Yilanem had requested another meeting, this time bringing additional xenobiological experts via holographic conference. The gathered scientists represented decades of research into human psychology and behavior. "Commander," she began, "we've been analyzing the behavioral patterns from yesterday's confrontation. Our conclusions are troubling." The holographic displays showed comparative brain scans and stress hormone readings from various species during conflict situations. When most species face threats to their social bonds, they experience elevated stress and seek to minimize conflict through submission or flight. Humans show a completely different pattern. Dr. Mexis, a Taldari expert in human military psychology, leaned forward in his chair. Humans actually become calmer when their family units are threatened. Their stress responses shift from panic to cold planning. They begin calculating the most efficient methods to neutralize threats. "Are you saying Chen is planning to attack the hegemony forces?" "We're saying he's already planning," Dr. Yilanem replied. "The question is whether he's planning defense or offense. And given human history, that distinction may be meaningless." She activated another display showing historical human conflicts. When humans fought defensive wars to protect their families and homes, they consistently defeated larger, better-equipped forces. They don't fight for territory or resources when family is involved. They fight for complete victory. Zareth reviewed the footage again, watching Chen's micro-expressions and body language. He's been systematically observing hegemony movements and equipment, but he hasn't shown any aggressive behavior. "That's what makes this so dangerous," Dr. Mexis interjected. "Aggressive humans are predictable. Calm, planning humans are the ones who change the course of galactic history." As if summoned by their conversation, her aide appeared with an urgent update. "Commander, Captain Chen has requested a private meeting with you. He says it's regarding station security protocols." 30 minutes later, Chen sat across from Zareth in her office. Rusty lay quietly beside his chair, though his ears remained alert to every sound in the corridor outside. "Commander, I want to thank you for maintaining neutral protocols during this situation," Chen began. "I'm simply following standard procedures, Captain Chen." "I know, and I appreciate that." He leaned forward slightly. "I also want you to know that I've contacted my government regarding the hegemony's behavior. Earth is taking a very serious interest in what happens here." The implied threat was subtle but unmistakable. Earth's military was still relatively small compared to established galactic powers, but their recent conflicts had proven human tactical superiority was not to be underestimated. "I hope it doesn't come to that," Zareth replied carefully. "So do I." Chen reached down to stroke Rusty's head. "But I want you to understand something about humans. We value peace, cooperation, and mutual respect. We've tried very hard to fit into galactic society. Your species has been exemplary in that regard." "Thank you. But there's something else you should know." His voice took on a tone that made Zareth's security instincts flare. "We don't negotiate when family is threatened. We don't compromise. We don't seek middle ground." "What are you saying, Captain?" Chen stood, and Rusty immediately rose beside him. "I'm saying that if anything happens to Rusty, the hegemony won't be dealing with one upset human. They'll be dealing with the full wrath of humanity, and we have very long memories." After they left, Zareth immediately contacted her security chief. "I want continuous monitoring of all hegemony personnel. Any approach toward Bay 94 or Captain Chen requires my immediate notification." But the hegemony had been planning too. That evening, during the station's sleep cycle when corridors were less crowded, a hegemony technical team requested access to Bay 94's environmental systems. They claimed to be investigating potential contamination from the human ship's exhaust systems. The request seemed routine enough that the night shift supervisor approved it without consulting Zareth. By the time the alarm started, it was too late. Chen's voice came over the emergency communication system with deadly calm. "Station Commander, this is Captain Chen. Unknown intruders have breached my ship's security. Rusty is missing." Zareth's blood froze. Through the security feeds, she could see Chen standing in his ship's cargo bay. His entire demeanor had changed. The friendly trader was gone, replaced by something that radiated lethal purpose. Captain, we're investigating the breach. Please remain calm. Commander? Chen's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried through the comm system like ice. I want you to understand something. The hegemony thinks they've taken my property to teach me a lesson. They're wrong on both counts. Captain Chen, Rusty isn't property. He's family. And the lesson they're about to learn is why the galaxy should fear human wrath. The communication ended, leaving Zarath staring at the silent speaker. Throughout the station, emergency alarms began to sound as automated systems detected elevated stress readings from multiple species. Even the station's other residents could sense that something fundamental had shifted. In the depths of Bay 94, Marcus Chen was no longer a traitor. He was no longer a diplomat. He was no longer concerned with galactic politics or interspecies relations. He was a human, whose family had been taken, and the galaxy was about to remember why that was the most dangerous thing in the universe. The hunt began 12 minutes after Rusty's disappearance. Chen emerged from his ship carrying equipment that Zarath didn't recognize. The items weren't listed in the standard trader manifests, and their purpose became clear only when he activated them. Sophisticated tracking devices, military-grade sensors, and what appeared to be weapons designed for close-quarters combat. Captain Chen, Zarath's voice echoed through the docking bay's comm system. I must ask you to return to your ship while we investigate. Chen didn't respond. He was kneeling on the deck plating, running some kind of sensor over the metal surface. His movements were methodical, professional, and completely unlike the casual trader she'd known. Commander? His voice came back through his personal communicator. I'm tracking scent traces. Rusty was dragged, not carried. 3 individuals, heavy armor, moving toward Section J. How can you possibly— Humans have been tracking with dogs for thousands of years. We learned their techniques. The scanner in his hands beeped softly. They're trying to mask the trail with chemical scrubbers, but Rusty sheds hair constantly. The particles are still detectable. Zarath pulled up the station schematics on her display. Section J housed temporary holding facilities and interrogation rooms. It was also where the hegemony had requested private conference space upon their arrival. Captain, I'm ordering station security to— No. The word was spoken quietly, but with absolute finality. This is human business now. Through the security feeds, she watched Chen move through the corridors with inhuman precision. He avoided main thoroughfares, using maintenance passages and emergency routes that shouldn't have been accessible to civilian traders. Somehow he had obtained complete station blueprints and memorized them. How is he navigating like that? Her security chief asked. He's military, Dr. Yelanem answered from her position in the command center. Look at his movement patterns. That's not civilian training. Zarath realized with growing horror that they had never properly vetted Chen's background. His trader credentials were legitimate, his ship was properly registered, and his behavior had been exemplary. But humans had a saying about still waters running deep. Meanwhile, in Section J, Sub-Commander Vextai was discovering that taking a human's dog was far more complicated than expected. Rusty had been drugged during his capture, but the sedatives weren't fully effective. The dog was conscious enough to be terrified, but too disoriented to properly defend himself. He lay in a containment field, whimpering softly while Vextai's soldiers prepared their demonstration. The human will arrive soon, Vextai told his subordinates. When he sees what happens to creatures that show disrespect to the hegemony, he will understand proper hierarchy. But Vextai had made a critical error. He assumed Chen would react emotionally, arriving in a panic to beg for his pet's life. He expected tears, pleading, perhaps an offer of money or favors. Instead, the lights went out. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows as Chen's voice came through the room's communication system. Hegemony forces in Section J, this is Marcus Chen. You have something that belongs to me. Human. Vextai activated his armor's external speakers. Come forward and surrender yourself. Perhaps your creature will be returned unharmed. Silence. Then the air circulation system shut down. You have 60 seconds to release my dog and surrender, Chen's voice continued. After that, I will come in and take him back. Vextai's mandibles clicked in amusement. 1 human against 6 trained soldiers? Your mathematics are poor. My mathematics are perfect. 1 human. 1 family member. 6 obstacles to remove. The temperature began dropping as Chen somehow gained control of the environmental systems. Within minutes, the air was cold enough to affect the hegemony soldiers' equipment. Their energy weapons required optimal operating temperatures, and their armor's joints began stiffening. "Impossible," one of the soldiers muttered. "How does he have system access?" Through security feeds throughout the station, Zareth watched Chen's preparations. He had somehow gained administrative access to multiple ship systems and was systematically disabling the hegemony's advantages. Gravity generators, atmospheric controls, and even the magnetic containment fields were responding to his commands. "He's a slicer," her security chief realized. "Military-grade electronic warfare specialist." "No," Dr. Yelanem corrected, her crystalline features reflecting growing amazement. "He's human. They're natural problem solvers. Give them sufficient motivation, and they'll find ways to accomplish impossible tasks." In Section J, Vextai was beginning to understand his mistake. The temperature had dropped below his species' comfort zone. The air was becoming thin, and their equipment was malfunctioning. Most importantly, they could hear something moving through the ventilation shafts above them. "Release the animal," one of his soldiers urged. "We can negotiate." "No." Vextai's pride wouldn't allow retreat. "We are hegemony. We do not bow to inferior species." That's when the real attack began. The ventilation grate above their position exploded outward. Chen dropped into the room like a shadow, moving faster than the soldiers could track. His first target was the soldier operating Rusty's containment field. A precise strike to a joint in the alien's armor sent him crashing into the wall, unconscious. The containment field collapsed, and Rusty, still groggy from the drugs, stumbled toward his human. "Stay back, boy," Chen said softly, his voice carrying both love and deadly intent. "Let me clean up this mess." What followed wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration of human capability when family was threatened. Chen moved through the hegemony soldiers like water through a broken dam. Their heavy armor, designed to intimidate and protect against energy weapons, was useless against someone who knew precisely where to strike. Joints, sensors, life support connections. Every weakness was exploited with surgical precision. Vextai, the largest and most dangerous of the group, lasted 8 seconds in direct combat. When the lights came back on, 6 hegemony soldiers lay unconscious or immobilized on the floor. Chen knelt beside Rusty, checking for injuries with gentle hands that had just disabled a squad of elite warriors. "You're okay, boy," he whispered. "I've got you." Through the security feeds, the entire station watched in stunned silence as Chen carried his dog toward the medical bay. His expression was calm, almost serene, completely at odds with the devastation he'd left behind. Zareth realized that the galaxy's understanding of humans had just fundamentally changed. They weren't just clever traders or skilled diplomats or capable warriors. They were family creatures. And family, for humans, was sacred. The real question now was what would happen when the rest of humanity learned what the hegemony had done to one of their own. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Dr. Shenara, the station's chief medical officer, examined Rusty while Chen waited with the patience of a statue. The Valdorian physician had treated dozens of species, but she'd never seen a human maintain such focused calm while clearly concerned about a companion's welfare. "The sedatives are clearing his system," she reported. "No permanent damage, but he'll be disoriented for several more hours." Chen nodded, his hand never leaving Rusty's side. "Thank you, Doctor." Throughout the station, emergency teams were dealing with the unconscious hegemony soldiers. 3 had concussions, 2 had damaged armor systems, and Vextai himself had suffered what medical scanners described as comprehensive neural disruption. None of the injuries were life-threatening, but all were precisely calculated to disable without causing permanent harm. Zareth reviewed the security footage for the 7th time. Chen's assault had lasted less than 2 minutes, but every move had been planned with mathematical precision. He had neutralized 6 armed soldiers without killing any of them, despite having every legal and moral justification to use lethal force. "Commander," her communications officer called out. "Priority transmission from Earth Defense Command." The holographic projection materialized in her office, showing a stern-faced human woman in military uniform. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen, Earth Defense Command. I'm calling regarding the situation involving my brother." The family resemblance was unmistakable, though the Admiral carried herself with an authority that made even the experienced station commander feel nervous. "Admiral, Your brother is currently— I know exactly what my brother is doing, the Admiral interrupted. I also know what was done to his dog. I'm calling to inform you that Earth is dispatching a diplomatic mission to address this incident. That's not necessary, Admiral. The situation is under control. Admiral Chen's expression hardened. Commander, you misunderstand. This isn't a request for mediation. This is notification that Earth considers the unprovoked attack on a human family member to be an act of aggression requiring formal response. The implications hit Zarath like a plasma bolt. Earth was treating the kidnapping of a dog as an attack on human citizens. Not property damage, not a minor crime, but an act of war. The hegemony forces are in custody, she said quickly. Justice can be served through normal legal channels. The hegemony will be dealt with appropriately, Admiral Chen replied. But first we need to ensure this never happens again. The transmission ended, leaving Zarath staring at empty space. Within hours, the galaxy would learn that Earth considered attacks on human companions to be equivalent to attacks on humans themselves. In the medical bay, Chen was helping Rusty stand as the sedatives wore off. The dog was unsteady but alert, his tail wagging weakly as he recognized his human's scent and voice. That's it, boy. You're safe now. Dr. Yilanem approached cautiously. Captain Chen, may I ask you something? Of course, Doctor. You could have killed all of those soldiers. Your attack patterns showed complete tactical superiority. Why didn't you? Chen looked up from Rusty, his expression puzzled. Why would I kill them? Rusty was safe. The threat was neutralized, but they threatened your family, attacked your companion. By human historical standards, that would justify lethal retaliation. Chen's hand moved to scratch behind Rusty's ears, eliciting a contented sigh from the dog. Doctor, humans don't fight for revenge. We fight to protect what we love. Once Rusty was safe, killing them would have served no purpose. Yet your species' reputation suggests our reputation comes from what happens when we can't save what we love in time, Chen interrupted quietly. When human families are actually harmed, when we fail to protect them, that's when we become truly dangerous. Dr. Yilanem processed this distinction with growing understanding. Humans weren't inherently violent. They were inherently protective. The difference was crucial. Meanwhile, news of the incident was spreading through galactic communication networks. The hegemony's official response claimed that Chen had committed an unprovoked assault on peaceful diplomats. But their story fell apart when security footage leaked showing the kidnapping. The galaxy's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Their peaceful Malari issued a statement condemning attacks on bonded companions as violations of fundamental decency. The logical Zerani calculated that threats to human family units represent statistically unacceptable risks to galactic stability. Even, the warlike Krasari declared that honorable warriors do not make war on helpless creatures. Within 12 hours, 18 different species had lodged formal complaints against the hegemony. Within 24 hours, 3 major trade federations had suspended commerce with hegemony worlds. Within 48 hours, the Galactic Council called for emergency sessions to address the precedent of attacking civilian companions, but it was the human response that truly shocked the galaxy. Earth's diplomatic fleet arrived ahead of schedule. 12 ships, including 3 heavy cruisers and a carrier loaded with what intelligence sources identified as enforcement specialists. They didn't approach Nexus Prime aggressively, but their presence was unmistakable. Admiral Chen's transport docked at Bay 12, and she strode through the corridors with an entourage of officials, legal experts, and military advisors. Her destination was the medical bay where her brother waited with Rusty. The reunion was quiet, dignified, and utterly human. The Admiral, who commanded Earth's most powerful fleet, knelt beside a trading ship captain and gently petted his dog. "Hey there, Rusty," she said softly. "I heard you had some trouble." Rusty's tail wagged enthusiastically, and he licked her hand with obvious affection. The Admiral laughed, and for a moment, she wasn't a military commander dealing with an interstellar incident. She was just an aunt greeting her nephew's beloved pet. "How is he, Marcus?" "He's fine, Sarah, scared but fine. They didn't hurt him, just drugged him." "Good." The Admiral's voice took on a harder edge, because if they had hurt him, this would be a very different conversation. She stood and turned to address Zarath, who had arrived with her senior staff. "Commander, I want to thank you for maintaining neutrality during this incident. Earth appreciates professional conduct. Admiral, I hope we can resolve this diplomatically. Oh, we will, Admiral Chen replied. The hegemony will issue formal apologies, pay reparations, and establish protocols preventing future incidents. Their alternatives are significantly less pleasant. Through the medical bay's viewport, everyone could see the Earth fleet maintaining position just outside the station's neutral zone. The message was clear. Humanity would protect its own regardless of the cost. But Zareth was beginning to understand that the real message was deeper. Humans didn't just protect their own species. They protected their families, which could include any creature that earned their love and loyalty. The galaxy had learned something new about humanity that day. They weren't just clever or brave or resourceful. They were devoted to their bonds in ways that transcended species, logic, or political convenience. And that devotion, properly motivated, could move fleets. The formal negotiations took place in Nexus Prime's main conference chamber, with representatives from 7 major galactic powers observing. The hegemony delegation, led by Supreme Commander Thexval, arrived with obvious reluctance and barely concealed anger. Admiral Chen sat across from them with the calm confidence of someone holding all the important cards. Beside her sat Marcus, and at his feet lay Rusty, fully recovered and blissfully unaware that his kidnapping had brought 2 civilizations to the brink of conflict. The hegemony maintains that this incident was blown out of proportion, Supreme Commander Thexval began. The creature was temporarily detained for security purposes. No permanent harm occurred. Admiral Chen's expression remained neutral. The creature has a name. Rusty. He's a member of my brother's family, and he was kidnapped, drugged, and held against his will. It is an animal. He is family. The fundamental disconnect was obvious to every observer. The hegemony thought in terms of property and hierarchy. Humans thought in terms of relationships and bonds. Admiral, the Malari representative interjected, perhaps you could explain the human perspective for those unfamiliar with your species' social structures. Admiral Chen nodded. Gladly. For humans, family isn't just about genetics. It's about choice, loyalty, and mutual care. Rusty chose to bond with my brother. Marcus chose to accept that bond. They are now family by every measure that matters to humanity. She gestured toward the dog, who was contentedly chewing on a toy that Marcus had produced from his pack. Attacking Rusty isn't vandalism or theft. It's assault on a family member. Earth will respond to such attacks the same way we'd respond to attacks on any human. You would go to war over an animal? Thexval demanded. We would go to war for family. Admiral Chen replied simply. The weight of that statement settled over the conference room like a heavy blanket. Every representative present understood the implications. Humanity wasn't bluffing or posturing. They were stating a fundamental principle of their civilization. Dr. Mexis, attending as an expert witness, activated his presentation display. If I may provide context, the human-canine bond represents one of the most successful interspecies partnerships in galactic history. It predates human spaceflight by thousands of years and has shaped their entire approach to loyalty and protection. The display showed historical footage of human-dog relationships throughout their civilization. Rescue dogs finding survivors in collapsed buildings. Military dogs serving alongside soldiers. Therapy dogs providing comfort to the sick and elderly. Service dogs assisting disabled humans with daily tasks. This isn't simply pet ownership, Dr. Mexis continued. This is an evolutionary partnership that has defined human concepts of loyalty, sacrifice, and family bonds. Supreme Commander Thexval watched the footage with growing confusion. They risk their lives for creatures that provide minimal tactical advantage. They risk their lives for creatures they love, Admiral Chen corrected. And in return, those creatures provide something the hegemony has never understood. Unconditional loyalty born of genuine affection. Marcus spoke for the first time since the negotiations began. Rusty doesn't follow my orders because he's programmed or conditioned. He follows them because he chooses to. He trusts me completely because I've never given him reason not to. And you trust him? With my life. Without question or hesitation. The concept seemed to genuinely disturb the hegemony delegation. Their entire civilization was built on dominance hierarchies enforced through power and fear. The idea of relationships based on mutual choice and trust was foreign to them. This is inefficient, Thexval protested. Emotional bonds create vulnerability. Logical control creates strength. Admiral Chen smiled, and every experienced military observer in the room recognized the expression. It was the look of a predator that had just spotted weakness. Supreme Commander, let me share some statistics with you. Human military units that include bonded companion animals show 14% higher morale, 9% better tactical coordination, and 23% lower desertion rates compared to units without such bonds. She activated her own display, showing Earth's military performance records. Human exploration teams with companion animals discover resources 17% faster and report 11% fewer psychological stress incidents during long-duration missions. These numbers are documented and verified by independent sources, Admiral Chen interrupted. Emotional bonds don't create weakness, Supreme Commander. They create motivation to achieve impossible things. The presentation continued, showing human achievements throughout their brief galactic presence. First contact protocols that had prevented 3 separate wars through empathetic communication. Trade negotiations that had established profitable relationships with species that had been hostile to other civilizations for centuries. Rescue operations that had saved thousands of lives in situations other species had written off as hopeless. Every one of these successes came from humans who understood that strength comes from bonds, not domination, Admiral Chen concluded. Commander Zarath, observing from the gallery, realized she was witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't just a diplomatic negotiation about a specific incident. It was a fundamental challenge to how galactic civilization understood power and relationships. The Malari representative leaned forward. Admiral Chen, what does Earth require to consider this matter resolved? 3 things, Admiral Chen replied. First, formal acknowledgement that attacks on human companion animals constitute attacks on human citizens, with appropriate legal protections. Second, reparations to my brother for the emotional distress caused by threatening his family member. Third, establishment of protocols preventing future incidents, including education for military and diplomatic personnel who interact with humans and their companions. Supreme Commander Thexval's mandibles clicked aggressively. And if the hegemony refuses these demands? Admiral Chen's expression never changed. Then the hegemony will discover why humans have never lost a war when their families were threatened. The silence that followed was profound. Through the conference chamber's viewports, the Earth fleet remained visible, a quiet reminder of humanity's commitment to their stated principles. We need time to consider these proposals, Thexval finally said. You have 6 standard hours, Admiral Chen replied. After that, Earth will consider the matter resolved through other means. As the hegemony delegation filed out, Marcus reached down to pet Rusty's head. The dog looked up with obvious contentment, tail wagging slowly. Good boy, Marcus said quietly. You have no idea what you've started, do you? But Zarath, watching from the gallery, understood exactly what had been started. The galaxy had just been introduced to a new paradigm. Civilizations built on love and loyalty rather than fear and dominance, and that paradigm was backed by ships, weapons, and the absolute certainty that humans would do anything to protect their families. The next 6 hours would determine whether the galaxy was ready to accept that change peacefully. The hegemony's response came with 37 minutes to spare. Supreme Commander Thexval returned to the conference chamber with what appeared to be his entire senior staff. Their body language suggested a species that had spent considerable time reviewing tactical assessments and finding the results unsatisfactory. The hegemony accepts Earth's terms, he announced without preamble. Admiral Chen nodded calmly, though Zarath noticed the slight relaxation in her shoulders. Excellent. We'll have the formal documents prepared within the hour. However, Thexval continued, the hegemony requires clarification on certain points. Of course, this protection extends to all human companion animals? Even those not currently present? Every single one, Admiral Chen confirmed. From the dogs serving on exploration vessels to the cats living with human families on colony worlds, to the horses working on agricultural planets. They are all considered family by human law. The implications rippled through the assembled representatives. Humanity had just extended the protection of interstellar law to billions of non-sentient creatures based solely on emotional bonds. And if other species develop similar relationships with companion animals? Admiral Chen smiled. Then they'll have Earth's full support in protecting those relationships. Love and loyalty aren't limited to one species. Dr. Yelanim, observing from the scientific delegation, felt her crystalline structure resonate with excitement. This wasn't just a diplomatic victory for humanity. It was the establishment of a completely new legal principle, the recognition of emotional bonds as legitimate political relationships. The formal signing took less than an hour, but its effects would reshape galactic civilization for generations. The Rusty Protocols, as they quickly became known throughout space, established the first laws protecting interspecies emotional bonds and set precedents for considering non-sentient creatures as family members rather than property. As the various delegations prepared to depart, Marcus and Rusty took one final walk through Nexus Prime's corridors. The change in atmosphere was palpable. Species that had previously given them nervous glances now nodded respectfully. The human and his dog had become symbols of something larger than themselves. Captain Chen, Zarath approached them near the docking bay. I wanted to thank you personally. For what, Commander? For showing restraint. For proving that humans fight to protect, not to destroy. Marcus knelt to check Rusty's harness, ensuring it was properly fitted for their departure. Commander, I hope you understand something about humans that the hegemony missed. What's that? We're not dangerous because we're violent. We're dangerous because we care. And there's no limit to what we'll do for those we love. He stood and extended his hand to Zarath, who grasped it in the human gesture of respect. But we prefer to solve problems peacefully when possible. And when it's not possible? Marcus looked down at Rusty, who was watching their conversation with intelligent eyes. Then we solved them decisively. The departure of the Earth fleet was as impressive as their arrival. 12 ships moving in perfect formation, carrying with them the promise that humanity would remember this day and the precedent it had set. But it was the smaller moments that truly mattered. In the weeks that followed, reports began arriving from throughout the galaxy. A Zerani scientist had adopted an injured creature from her homeworld and was seeking protection under the Rusty Protocols. Mallory explorers were requesting guidance on forming bonds with local fauna on newly discovered worlds. Even some Crisari warriors were quietly inquiring about the possibility of companion animals improving unit cohesion. The galaxy was learning that strength could come from love instead of fear. 6 months later, Nexus Prime hosted the first Interspecies Companion Animal Rights Conference. Representatives from 43 civilizations gathered to establish universal protections for human-animal bonds and explore the possibility of similar relationships for other species. Commander Zarath, now promoted to Director of Interspecies Relations, opened the conference with a simple statement. We gather today because of a human named Marcus Chen and his dog named Rusty, who taught us that family isn't about genetics or species. It's about choice, loyalty, and love. In the audience, Dr. Yelanim presented her research on the benefits of interspecies bonding. Her findings showed measurable improvements in mental health, social cooperation, and even creative problem-solving among species that formed emotional bonds with companion animals. Meanwhile, Marcus and Rusty continued their trading routes through the galaxy, but with a difference. They were no longer just a human, and his dog navigating the complexities of interstellar commerce. They were ambassadors for a new way of understanding relationships between different forms of life. The hegemony, faced with mounting pressure from their own citizens who had begun questioning the efficiency of fear-based hierarchies, slowly began implementing changes. It would take generations for their society to fully embrace the concept of emotional bonds as strength rather than weakness, but the transformation had begun. And at the center of it all was a simple truth that humanity had known for millennia, but the galaxy was just discovering. Love makes individuals stronger, families unbreakable, and civilizations endure. The story of Rusty became legend throughout the galaxy, but not as a tale of human military might or tactical superiority. It became a story about the day the universe learned that threatening someone's family, regardless of species, regardless of logic, regardless of politics, would always awaken something in humans that was far more dangerous than any weapon. It would awaken their absolute, unwavering, and limitless capacity to protect those they loved. And that capacity, properly motivated, could indeed change the course of galactic history. Years later, When young beings throughout the galaxy asked their elders about the day the universe changed, they would be told about a human trader named Marcus Chen and his dog named Rusty, who taught everyone that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the willingness to sacrifice everything for family. And in quiet moments, when humans throughout the galaxy sat with their companions, dogs, cats, birds, and creatures from a dozen different worlds, they would remember that love transcends species, that family is defined by choice rather than genetics, and that the bonds we choose to honor define who we truly are. The wrath of humanity, when properly understood, wasn't about violence or conquest or dominance. It was about love so deep that nothing in the universe could stand against it. Nothing at all.